All right, let's talk about getting unstuck. You know that feeling, right? Trapped in a negative loop? Well, today we're going to dive into the brain science behind why that happens, and, more importantly, how you can actually rewire your thinking to break free, for good.
I mean, does this feel familiar? You have a clear goal, you've got the motivation, but somehow you end up right back where you started. It's so frustrating. But listen, you're not alone in this cycle. And it turns out there's a very real, very clear reason rooted in your brain for why this keeps happening.
Yeah, this is what we call the self-sabotage loop. You know, that pattern of just going in circles, putting off the important stuff, and feeling like you're your own worst enemy. But here's the thing. What if I told you this has almost nothing to do with your motivation or your character? That's right. This isn't some personal failing. It's not a bug in your system. It's a feature. It's literally how your brain is designed to work. It's running on an ancient operating system built for a world that, well, it doesn't really exist anymore. And just understanding that is the very first step to taking back control.
Okay, so to really get a handle on this, we need to meet the two key players inside your mind. We're going to call them your autopilot brain and your pilot brain. Now, this idea was made famous by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, who called them System 1 and System 2. And trust me, this concept, it's the key to everything.
So check this out. On the left, you've got the limbic system. That's our autopilot. It's the older, kind of reptilian part of our brain. And on the right, that's the neocortex, our pilot, the modern, sophisticated, superhuman part. The thing is, these two are in a constant tug of war for control of your mind.
Okay, let's really break this down. Your autopilot, it's lightning fast, super energy efficient. It makes snap judgments based on pure survival instinct, fight, flight, or freeze. But your pilot, well, it's slow, it's deliberate, and it burns a ton of energy. It's the part that lets you solve tricky problems and see all the gray areas. And here's the kicker. Because the pilot is such an energy guzzler, your brain is hardwired to default to the autopilot whenever it can. And that is the root of the entire problem.
So the big question is, how do you even know when your autopilot has grabbed the steering wheel? Well, you look for its signature moves. In psychology, they're called cognitive biases. The best way to think of them is like predictable little glitches or mental shortcuts in your autopilot's programming. Basically, these biases are just the dead giveaways that your fast, survival-focused brain is running the show. See, it doesn't do nuance. It sees the world in black and white, good or bad, safe or dangerous. It just doesn't have time for anything in between, and that's exactly where we get into trouble.
Okay, here's a classic. We've all been there. You make one tiny mistake at work, and immediately your autopilot just screams, "I'm a complete failure." That's textbook black and white thinking. It takes one little event and blows it up into your entire identity. Your pilot knows it's a crazy exaggeration, but the autopilot is just so much faster.
Or what about this one? Your boss gives you some quick feedback, and your brain instantly jumps to, "He thinks I'm an idiot." This is a bias called mind reading. Your autopilot just assumes it knows what the other person is thinking, and it's almost always something negative, right? That's because its main job is to scan for threats.
And here's another one we've all done. One thing goes wrong on a trip. Maybe a flight gets delayed, or it rains one afternoon, and suddenly your autopilot is screaming, "This is the worst vacation ever." That's called catastrophizing. It takes one negative thing and blows it completely out of proportion, ignoring everything good. That's just the autopilot trying to wave a big red danger flag.
Okay, so spotting these tricks is step one. That's huge. But the next step is to actively wake up your thoughtful, deliberate pilot. And the really good news? There are some super simple, but really powerful techniques to do exactly that, to shift gears and get out of those negative loops.
All right, here is a fantastic tool you can literally use today. It's called the 7-minute thought dump. Step 1, set a timer for 7 minutes and just write. Get all that junk, all that mental chatter out of your head and onto paper. Don't censor anything. Then, step 2, you're going to read it back and be a detective. Highlight all the autopilot's tricks. The "I'm a failure," the "he thinks I'm an idiot," all of it. And finally, and this is the absolute key, you engage your pilot by consciously writing down 3 to 5 alternative, more balanced, more realistic ways of looking at each of those negative thoughts.
Here's another technique, and it's so simple it's almost profound. It's the strategic pause. See, your autopilot loves to worry about the past or freak out about the future. But you know where it can't operate? Right here, in the present moment. The second you bring your focus to the now, you short-circuit it. So next time you're stopped at a red light, don't grab your phone. Just take one deep breath. Look around. Notice one thing you see. That tiny little gap, that's all your pilot needs to come back online.
But listen, all of these amazing techniques depend on one critical resource: energy. Remember how we said your pilot brain is an energy guzzler? Well, if you're running on empty, your brain is always going to default back to the autopilot. It's just easier. Which brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the puzzle: rest. And I'm not just talking about getting 8 hours of sleep.
It turns out there are actually 7 different types of rest that we need. This research is a total game changer. I mean, have you ever slept all night but still woken up feeling completely exhausted? It's probably because you're missing one of these. Like, are you getting sensory rest? Time away from screens and noise and just constant input? Or what about emotional rest? Having a space where you don't have to be on for anybody. Figuring out which of these you're actually craving is the key to really, truly recharging.
And this is why real rest isn't lazy, it's a strategic necessity. It is quite literally the fuel for your pilot brain. When you give yourself the right kind of rest, the kind you're actually missing, you're giving that higher level thinking the energy it needs to solve problems, to be creative, and to finally override those knee-jerk reactions of your autopilot.
And all of this brings us to the final, and I think the most exciting question. Because once you learn how to spot the autopilot's tricks, once you learn how to pause and how to give your pilot the fuel it needs, a whole new space opens up. The question stops being, how do I stop feeling so stuck? And it becomes, what do I truly want? What do you want to create, to experience, to become? And that is a question only your pilot can answer.